Welcome to this episode of Off the Record, Conversations on the Creative Landscape. My name is Philip.
I just keep pushing and I don't take no for an answer, and I'm really good at making decisions and really fast decisions. So I think that's why it looks like my output is pretty high.
Today with us on the podcast is Alex Proba. She's a graphic designer and renowned artist from Brooklyn, New York. And it's a super interesting episode for everybody who wants to understand how the artist journey actually might work out and how to go from a student in a completely different field to an internationally recognized artist. It's super interesting. She's going to talk about all the products she has, about the people she's worked with, her favorite designers, stuff that is annoying her, all the cool stuff you want to hear. So tune in and have fun. Welcome everyone. Today we have Alex Proba on the line. She is a Brooklyn-based artist and she does a lot of cool stuff. You can see it on our Instagram and on the blog. I don't even know how to describe it. It's beautiful, shapeful illustrations with a lot of colors and on a lot of different objects and materials. Welcome, Alex. Thank you for joining. And maybe we can already kick off with a short introduction of yourself. So Alex is based in the United States, basically Brooklyn, but now she's been living in Portland for the last year. Originally born in Germany, and also you've studied in Europe, in Hamburg and Eindhoven, in the Netherlands. Maybe you could, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, you did it better than I would have, so thanks. Thanks for having me. We went to high school together. I don't know if that's important here, but which is kind of cool to reconnect on this
absolutely
medium. And so I went to high school mostly in the Cologne area. And then after that, being from a family of doctors, all I could pursue in my head and my parents wanted me to do is medicine or something scientific or just a normal job that pays the bills, I guess, which I kind of did. I got into dentistry school, but then right when I was about to go, I was just holy shit, I don't want to do this. How can I get out of this and what do I do? And then I was way too afraid to explore art as a thing. So I picked interior architecture and graphic design and found a school in Hamburg, which kind of, they didn't really have a two-set curriculum, and you kind of could do whatever you wanted with it in a way. And it was also, instead of 3.5 years, it took 4 years, and there was a really long internship within it. So I tried to apply, did a portfolio secretly, which is a whole different story I can tell you, which is kind of funny. And then when I got in, that's when I told my parents that I'm not going to do dentistry and I'm just going to go and do graphic design and interior architecture. And that didn't land too well.
I can imagine.
With my dad mostly. My mom was just thank God, I'm so glad you're doing this. I can't imagine you being a dentist. And so she at that time wasn't with my dad anymore, which helped probably to have her own opinion about it. But my dad wasn't too keen on it and kind of stopped talking to me for a while. In a way, I think I used that as a fuel of just proving him wrong, that I'm not going to be a starving artist. I'm going to pay my bills and I'm going to make a good life for myself with something I really want to do. And I think that was the biggest fuel of just finishing school and being good in it. And also with interior architecture, I'm not the best in math and logical thinking. So that was the other thing with my dad, which was you're never gonna do it. You couldn't even do algebra basically. And I'm just okay, I'm gonna figure this out. And then after graduation, I think I did a graduation with one of my friends in school together. We did a dual, I don't even know how you say it, but a dual
assignment,
final assignment. And we actually graduated as best of class, which was really great. So I was just cool, achieved. Maybe my dad will understand that it's probably a good way to do that route for me, but he still didn't. And then I went in that time in school, I went to New York actually to work for an architect as I don't remember, I think it was 8 months or something, internship in a architecture studio in Tribeca. And there I actually noticed that I really don't want to do architecture because it was way too slow for me. Like there was like no instant gratification. It was a lot of just like concepting, a lot of waiting, a lot of endless hours just working on master plans, and then nothing really happening, and you could never see like the result, obviously, because building a building or designing it and then building it and all the construction and everything takes a long time. Yeah. But a lot of architects don't even get that far, right? They just like have to like submit a proposal or do a vision, a master plan, and it's just like a lot of work for not much like, yeah, like I don't even want to like not celebration, but like no gratification, I guess. And then I realized that pretty quickly and was like drawn more into like graphic design and just design, visual design as a whole. But I still like making things, and I still wanted to learn how to not just like do 2D things. So I decided to go to grad school for furniture and product design in the Netherlands. And that was like, my parents were like, what are you doing? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, oh no, it totally makes sense. Like in my head, I kind of saw it all come together in the end, but I think for them being doctors, it was really hard to imagine what I'm actually doing. And then, yeah, in that time, my old boss actually from New York reached out that when I'm done with school, if I can come to New York again for a project. And I was like, sure, why not? That's like, I have no plans. Like, I love New York, and maybe I just go for that project and see what happens. And then, yeah, and then like 12 years later, I'm still here. So that's like the short version of it. But there's like a lot more to it.
But then you came to New York and you were still not an artist by yourself. There's this prequel, you know, of your education. And then how did it happen that you became like an award-winning, like mentioned artist that is super successful?
Well, I mean, let's just go back a couple steps. Basically, just like how I got raised, like art wasn't a thing in our family, and it's not. I'm not blaming anyone. Like I don't blame my parents. I just have different interests, right? They're like super science based, and they love to travel, and they showed us the world in many ways. But art wasn't a big thing. Plus, they're not art educated either. And it's like hard for them to just like understand it. So I didn't even know art was a thing when I was growing up. Like I had no clue that that's something you could do. And once I went, I don't know if you remember, but remember when I went to Ohio for that exchange year in like, I think 11th grade when we were in high school. And then basically in Ohio, my host family the mom used to be a designer at DKNY in New York in the 80s. And they were like super into art, and they would just like take me to every museum in Cleveland and everything you could see. And like the house itself was a piece of art. Like she had like a room, which was like, her living room was like painted in like this weird watercolor blue thing. And then she handwritten like poems that she got over time from her friends, and like handwriting all over the walls. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool. This whole house, like every room is like an art piece in a way. And she was like very strong about like educating us, even though for me just that year, she was very strong in being like, you guys, like this is like a path that you can go. And then I also ended up taking a lot of art classes in Ohio with 15, 16. And then my art teacher at that time, Alan, he was like, you're good. Like you should do something. I was like, no, it's like fun. It's like fun as a hobby. And then when I came back to Germany, I kind of like started painting and doing all these things that I never did. And my parents were like, okay, like newfound hobby, fine, like whatever, right? Like at least she's like keeping herself busy. And then weirdly, like in the town I'm from, it's like super tiny town called Lüdenscheid. And it's like, you know, the perfume store Douglas. They asked me if they could have some of the paintings when I was like 16 for their windows, and I was like, oh wow, that's so cool. Nice. I mean, looking back at the paintings, they're like, yeah, like they're horrible, obviously.
Yeah. It's like, thank you for supporting this kid.
Yeah, but it was like really nice, and I was just like, okay, cool. And then my mom hung like a bunch of them in her office, which she still has, and I'm asking her like almost every day to put them down because they're just kind of embarrassing at this point. But she's like, nope, like they might be worth something. I'm like, okay. So that was kind of the start of it, where I was just like, okay, there's something, and I'm really enjoying this. So what I mentioned before with the portfolio part that I did secretly, so I knew I couldn't do it at home because my parents would be like, what are you doing? Like, this looks like not like dentistry. Like, you know, they would totally have known what I'm doing. And so I asked them if I could go, before starting dentistry, if I could go to Ohio to visit basically my host sister, Alexa, and Garen, my host brother, because we were pretty close at that point. And then my parents was like, okay, sure, if they're fine with it, you can go. But both of them were in college. None of them were home. It was just the mom. And so she knew about my plan. So she like literally helped me to bust out that portfolio in 2 weeks.
Nice.
And just drove me around Ohio to all the art stores, and yeah, like amazing support. And then we did it. And then I actually didn't feel like, when I got back, I kind of like got cold feet, and I was like, okay, no, I'm just going to do dentistry. My dad is right. Like, this is never going to happen. And so my boyfriend, obviously at the time, you know, high school boyfriend, or like whatever you want to call it, he actually dropped off my portfolio in the
school?
like Deutsche Post, basically, without really me knowing. And when I got the letter to be like invited for an interview, I was like, wait, how am I invited? Like, I didn't even send it. He did it. So I have like a lot of people that kind of like believed in me more than I did at that time.
And I must say, this is a really cute thing to do.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I'm still friends with him. Like he just had a baby, and we still talk, and it's like literally like 20 years ago, right? Or even longer, that I know him for. And same with my family from Ohio. I'm still in very good contact with them, and I just talked to Alexa like 2 days ago, and she's gonna write all the text for my new websites, and she's a art writer. So we're really close, and it's been like so long ago, but they've been like such a big part of my life and like where I am today. And I'm not saying my parents weren't. It's like they were a different support, right?
Maybe your parents just you know, taught you other things. You know, I expect them.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, the way I got to know you in school, you know, you were always super disciplined, super hardworking. I think this is also a gift. You know, your parents were able, you know, to give you, right?
Oh yeah, and I like now looking back, you know, with 35, I'm like, maybe that was a good thing that did that. Obviously, he didn't think that way, but for me, it was like, maybe it was a good way, because I would have never pushed that hard to like become what I am now if it wasn't him, right? If he would have been like, yes, honey, just do it, like you'd be great, I probably would have tried less hard, I guess. But I really wanted to prove it to him that I can do it, and that kept me like going. And like, you know, in like a city like New York with like a lot of competition, a lot of creatives, a lot of like expensive apartments and everything, like it just, and I never wanted to ask them for money. Like that was like out of the picture, just because I wanted to never be like, hey, you're right, like I can't pay rent, can you pay my rent, kind of thing. And so I would ask my best friend Laura, she's still in New York, but I would ask her for like $300 to pay my rent and pay her back, because in the beginning I didn't have the money, obviously, to make it work. And I met her at the architecture office, and she, I think she's like 5 years older than me, so she kind of was like more settled already. Like she was an architect, and she kind of had a better income than me in the beginning, so she didn't mind helping me. But there was like no way I could like call up my dad and be like, hey, can you help me? You know, so they probably don't even know that part, that she paid for some of my rent sometimes. I mean, I always paid her back.
Maybe they're going to find out if they listen to this podcast.
Maybe, but the English is not really good.
Okay. So we're lucky. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically your question was about like how I became an artist, and like I still think I'm an artist and designer, and I know a lot of people don't see that line blurred, but I think it's like a very blurry line of who you are. And I'm totally graphic design or design trained, and then the art just happened. Like I did not plan on it, and it just every step I took, I think, just happened without me thinking about it. I now get a lot of like mentor calls, or like old coworkers or old student, like interns and students calling me to like for mentorship, or even just like to answer questions, what to do and what the business plan is. And I was like, I don't have a business plan. I never really knew what I'm doing. I just like went for it, and kind of like every day was a new day, and whatever happens. And so it's really hard for me to like give them like the best advice to how become, a successful artist or a designer or something. But what I always tell them is like, you got to fail. And failing is probably the best thing you can do, because when you fail and you don't succeed in something, that's like when you like pivot and like change and learn from it, and you like kind of like pick another route or redo it or whatever it is. And I think that's kind of what I was doing, and I had no clue what I was doing. And then from being in architecture and doing that project for my old architecture boss, I actually realized I want to stay in New York, and that's the place where I want to be, and it's like my favorite place on earth, I think. And so I tried to apply for like graphic design jobs, even though I never worked in graphic design because, straight out of school and stuff. So again, my host sister, Alexa, she had a friend that started this business called General Assembly back in the day. Now, I guess it's been a while. And she sent him my portfolio, and he just sent their creative director my portfolio. And then it all came together, and they hired me to be like on their brand team. And that was kind of my first like role in like graphic design. And I was working with Mimi, who is like an amazing person and creative and everything. So she is probably my mentor, I would say. Like if I needed help with anything, like I would go to her. And so she kind of, took me, like I was the only brand designer with her, and the company was like really fast growing. Like when I started, we were still like a co-working space, and then it turned into a school, because one morning one of the founders walked in and he was like, how about we just become like a school? We just use classrooms instead of like co-working spaces and things like that. So we had to pivot and like create the whole brand, like recreate the brand in the same way, but for being like a school, like a new kind of school, teaching like digital marketing or coding or whatever it is, if you want to switch careers. And I think, they since then got IPO'd and got sold and everything. But I was there for a while, and while I was there, I was kind of already feeling like not bored, but like if you just work with one brand every single day, you kind of, as a creative, or as me, I guess, as the creative I am, you get bored. And I was trying to like find something else, and it's hard because you have like a visa and you can't just leave and do your own thing. It's like really limited what you can actually do in the US when you're by yourself, I guess. So I had to stick around, obviously, for my visa and everything. And Mimi actually left at some point, and then when she left, I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to be here either, just because like she was the one why I was there, kind of thing. And then I tried to find another job, and I got another job at Kickstarter, which again is like graphic design on the brand side, and we tried to like redesign Kickstarter at that time. And but again, you're within a brand every single day, which is not a bad thing, but for me it was just like not the right thing. And so at that time, I think right at the end of General Assembly, I started this project that the Poster Day one, which is a poster day, like how it sounds. But I didn't plan that one either. I had like 20 Instagram followers, I think.
Maybe for everybody who's listening, so a poster day basically means every day you would sit down like 30 minutes and you would just illustrate a poster, and you would post it on Instagram, and people could ask questions.
No, that was the second year.
Oh, that
was later.
Okay. So every day you would sit down about half an hour and just illustrate a poster.
Yeah, so the idea was basically at that time, when I started it, to just do a poster every day, just to do something else than work, and just, just lose like also the fear of like sharing something online, because a lot of people, I can make a poster and then I don't like it, and I can spend 20 hours on it and I still don't like it. So I think I was trying to lose that fear. So I told my friends, 20 Instagram followers at the time, I'm going to do this poster day thing for like 100 days or something. And they were like, yeah, right. Okay, cool. Whatever. Right. No one really, really cared. But I think I just needed to post it to like make myself, like hold myself accountable. And then what I realized that I could only do it after work, which was nighttime. So I did it at nighttime and realized that every poster kind of was like the summary of my day, almost like a visual diary thing. And that's when I kind of like started enjoying it. I was like, oh, it's not even just like going running, right, for health reasons. Actually, I like it. And at some point, I think you like running when you're good in it and all these things. But like, it wasn't like a chore. It was actually something I liked. And then it was cool to look back at them and seeing like the days. And I didn't have my style defined. I didn't know who I am as a designer or artist at all. And so I just did whatever I felt in those 30 minutes that I set myself, because I knew if I do it longer or tell me like there's no end, I will never like post anything, because if there's like no hard ending, like it's really hard to do something. And then so I did that for a while, and even when I was like coming from a party, like I had too much wine to drink, like I still posted it, sometimes in blurry, and people slowly started following it and would be like, wait, where were you? Were you drunk? Like, this is so blurry, I can't see anything. I'm like, oh, oops, yeah, sure. But I left it, right? I just left the blurry ones too, or like the ones that were wrong, because I just wanted to lose the fear of like sharing designs or anything art. And then basically on like day, I don't know, even like 80 or something, blogs started picking up and like writing about it. And then I was like, oh God, like I can't just do it for 100 days now because people are writing about it. And then like I was kind of building an audience without even planning it. And then, you know, the first year went by and I don't remember how many followers I had at that point, but it was like quite significantly more than 20. And I then decided to like, you know, continue a second year. And the second year was about you, basically, where you submitted stories and you could tell me whatever you wanted. Like I didn't tell people what to submit, just like tell me about you or your story or whatever you want to tell me. And that was the second year, which in my head would have been like stories that are funny or happy, but because my work is very happy and, you know, vibrant, and it's not really meant to make you sad. So, but most of the stories, maybe 80% were super sad, from, you know, from cancer to, yeah, like crazy, from like cancers to rape to assault to everything. And I was just like, oh my.
Why do you think people especially share those kind of stories?
I did it anonymous, so people could tell me anonymously what they wanted to, and no one really would know other than me who they are. So I think a lot of people probably had a bad experience in life and wanted something positive to get out of it. That was like my only explanation, like kind of like a therapy almost, like, you know, you like get something good out of the bad in a way. And it was a really hard time for me because I couldn't, for the longest time, I couldn't accept it. I was like, man, like, what do I do? Do I go to the police? Do I report this? Like, I don't even know what to do, right? Because sometimes I obviously had all the connecting parts, like, you know, like they would tell me names or relationships, who would like, and I would be like, oh God, like, what do I do? And then I decided obviously not to do anything other than them telling me the story and then making something, making something nice for them. And so I could do this. And, but yeah, it was very surprising that it was mostly sad stories. But I kind of used it as my therapy as well. I think that year I was just like, oh my God, my life is great. Like, I have no problem. Like, you know, you just like put it into perspective if you get flooded with like stories of that are real stories every day from people. And I was just like, oh God. So like the third year, then I did hours, which was a conversation. So people asked me questions, which I then answered visually. That one was the hardest, probably just because like the information was like, just the question sometimes was not, you know, it was just like, what did you have for breakfast? Like, yeah, well, okay. You know, so like sometimes the questions were harder than like stories or even my diary. And then the fourth year, which was the election year, Hillary and Trump, I did hers, which is like asked people to tell me stories about women that like influenced their lives in like a positive or negative or whatever way. Or like stories like that inspire them, and women, just like to celebrate women in a way. And so I did that, and then I have like done I think 1,460 posters and to be done, just because like I felt like I needed an end, and then I felt like the audience maybe needed an end in a way too. And at that point I already had like an open door to whatever I do, kind of people would watch. So I wouldn't only post posters, I would already like, you know, post other things from just like furniture collaborations at the time, or, you know, other things that are like, I did some like collaborations with like clothing brands. And so I would already trickle in other stuff on my Instagram, again, not planned, but I already had that door that was open to me from all the followers because of that project. And
I think it's actually good that you ended it, because that's kind of how you build the legacy. The legacy is only there when it, you know, the real thing is not existing anymore. So I think a lot of people might want to, get it back and want to see this poster a day, because for me, I've been following it from the very early days. And for me, it was always like super nice to see every day something that was inspiring and that was beautiful. And I was sad to see it go. But then again, this is how the story is created, and this is, how the legacy is built from that project.
Yeah, totally. And it was just like also like another thing that I was like worried about is like, what's the next one? Like, if I did hers, I would have to do like a hymn or something, which I didn't want to do. Obviously, not with the outcome of the election. I was like,
Yes.
there's no way I'm doing this. So I think it was just like a good ending point for me, and I think at that, and then also it's like the beginning, it was like 30, the first year was 30 minutes, but then all the other years became way more involved because I had to read the emails in the morning, think about which story I want to do all day long, about like, images in my head, what I could do with that story. And then I would do it at night. So it was like a way more, time consuming project after year one, because it didn't involve me anymore, it involved all the others. Right. So at that point I switched from Kickstarter to Mother Design, which is an agency based in New York and in London and in Buenos Aires. And I was a design director, just like working on like big clients from like Target to AIGA and Oscar Health, like a lot of like juggling to do. And then I was just like, okay, I can't possibly do all of that and like do all of it right. Plus I had already other projects, like I mentioned before, furniture collaborations with like Bauer and exhibitions and all these things coming up. So I was just like, okay, it's like a good time for the next kind of chapter. It's great to hear that you think that was a good idea to stop, but yeah.
I mean, not
I
because
don't miss it.
obviously not because the project wasn't nice, but because I just think once you end something, it's just like the famous artists, once they get out of business for whatever reason, they become bigger in our minds, I think.
Or maybe I should just shut down completely.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Not sure about that, but yeah. Okay, so what I understand, you worked along your day job to become to build a profile of yourself as an artist, and then at some point, I know you also worked for Nike, and you were an art director there. And at some point you said, okay, you're gonna do this full time. What fueled this decision?
So it was a little like almost, you got it almost, but I was at Mother, and then at Mother, I decided, because I had my green card that I self-sponsored through my studio. I got it during the time of Kickstarter actually, but I never had the balls to just like leave and do my own thing. I was just way too scared. And so at Mother, I think it's when it started to where I was just like, okay, now or never kind of thing. So I decided to leave Mother and went solo on my own, doing my studio Proba business. And then I think I was like 4 months doing it and everything was going pretty well. That's when Nike came along and they were just like, hey, we have a job for you. And I was like, no, I'm good. I just quit my job. I'm totally fine. So I actually told the recruiter like that I'm not interested in this. And even though Nike was like my dream job, like if I would have thought about it, or like I always wanted to work for them, but it was the wrong timing for me, I think. And then I was just like, nah, like I gotta do this. I gotta do Studio Proba. I have to keep doing it. But then Nike also didn't let go, and they were like, no, like this is a great job opportunity, and it was amazing what they wanted to do and what we did. And I think so. I was just like talking to my parents and my mom, and she was like, come on, just do it, just try it. Why not? You can always go back to doing Studio Proba. And I was like, I don't know if I can, but let's see. So I actually ended up taking the job, which was like helping them to build out the New York design studio, which they don't have because all the creative is out of Portland. And then obviously out of like some cities like Amsterdam, if it's the European market. But they wanted to build out little hubs in like their big markets and territories like New York, Singapore, Tokyo and stuff, and build small creative teams. So me and another guy, Thomas, were the two that got hired for that job, and we kind of like tried to build out a team. And so plus doing all the Nike project that touched our territory, like the East Coast or New York. So any activation from like Off-White to basketball court in in Harlem or whatever it would be, just touched us. And us meeting at that time was just me and Thomas, which was hard because we tried to like get all the work done, but then also hire a team, and like it was just like it was a lot, and it was great. And but we started flying around a lot to Portland for projects as well, because our creative director at the time was based in Portland, and so we had to go back and forth a lot. So on one of the projects, I actually met my now partner Ian, and he and I did a project that I think it lasted for like a year almost, that project, or something like that, or like 10 months. It was a long project, but so we met on that project here in Portland, and he's based in Portland, and he runs his own agency. And so basically when I went back to New York, he was like the person I had to talk almost every day about that project, just because it was a very new technology that we were using, and he was like building the new technology, and I had to like apply the art or the designs to his technology. And so we were probably talking like 5 times a day for like months, and that's kind of how we met. And then when we started dating, I was kind of like, no, like I can't do this, I can't have a studio, Nike, and a long distance relationship. This is not going to work, like this is crazy. So I was kind of hesitant about everything. And then obviously how life goes, like you just, at some point you're like, oh, whatever, like it's going to work out. You can do all 3 things. So for a year, I think I was doing all 3 things, and I was getting burned down because one of us would fly on weekends to like see each other for just a weekend, because we both had jobs and like not all the freedom we could have. And a flight from New York to Portland is 6 hours. So it's like as if I'm going home to see my family to Germany.
Every weekend.
Like every second weekend at least.
That's nuts.
It was nuts. So one of us, right? So one of us, so it was like shifting, but honestly, it was just like we would hang out on like a Saturday, and then the next day someone would fly again, because it's like time change plus the long flight, and then obviously not cheap either. Like a flight is maybe like $500. It's not cheap. So we were doing that for like I think a year or something. And then I was just like, okay, I gotta like reconfigure my life right now. I can't do all this. And then I was like kind of like put in this decision of like Nike, Studio Proba, relationship. And I think for the first time in my whole life, I didn't choose career. I chose life. And then basically I chose to leave Nike, not because like I loved the company and I loved working there. So not because of them, I chose Studio Proba and Ian like over them. And that was kind of like first decision that I ever made, like that wasn't career based. I was freaking out about it, but then once I left Nike, or right before I was leaving, I got an email from Dropbox, and they were like, hey, we have this giant wall, can you paint it? And I was like, oh my God, awesome, cool, I'll be there like next week if that works, right? So like it all kind of fell together. And I did the first Dropbox mural in New York for their headquarters in New York while I was still at Mother. And then I didn't do much of murals for a while, just because I didn't have the time to travel with jobs. And so when that came right in the time when I was leaving, I was like, okay, that's a good start of like, going solo kind of thing. And then I flew to San Francisco to paint that mural. And then I went to Portland, and I hung out a little bit here with my boyfriend, and we just kind of figured out life in a way. And so, yeah, so I've been, and then everything kind of kept falling together, and project kept happening. And, from murals on just the wall, I kind of like pushed myself in doing it on other objects, just because of my background in furniture. And like I don't think I prefer doing like the unexpected over the expected kind of thing. And and then I just like would build out my home business a little bit more too, with my textiles and all that stuff that I was already doing next to my full-time jobs. But I just like kind of like dived fully in and just started doing my own thing. And that's been now, I think, 3 years or something like that, or maybe a little longer. I don't even know, because of last year COVID. But yeah, it's been a while, and it's been going really good, and I'm like very thankful about that.
Wow, what an introduction! It's like 30 minutes, but I think I mean, I was like, man, I'm the host. I gotta say something. I gotta host this podcast. But it was so cool listening just to all of this. It's super inspiring, the story. And
Thanks.
I have a lot of questions. I've prepared, like this typical host list of questions, everything. But I just want to like connect right to the piece when you said like, okay, you started doing all of these other objects. So you do, textiles, rugs and pillows and but you also do like basketball courts, ping pong tables, objects, I don't know what to call them, like a lot of different type of stuff. And I know you also sell them. How do you make that step from creating to becoming like a commercially successful person?
I mean, it was just again, it was kind of like the next. That was like right after Poster Day. I didn't want to let them like die in the archives of the internet, or I just kind of was like, okay, there's a lot of them that I like, and there's a lot of them that I don't like. But like the ones that I like, I kind of wanted to bring them to life. And one logical thing was the rugs. So I started. First I did a like collaboration with another rug maker in Brooklyn to just like understand, you know, everything I guess about it, and that one went really well, and we got featured in the New York Times. So I was just like, oh my god, like what? Like, and then we got exhibited at the Cooper Hewitt, which is like a museum in New York, and that was just like my first like rug collection that I ever did, and I was like, okay, well, they seems to be going well. Maybe
That's
I just
going
like
well.
maybe I repurposed some of my already like done graphics, like the Poster Day ones that were like popular, and tried to translate them into rugs. And I think that was like the second step. And then I just like started selling them on just like, my Squarespace website. I just like put everything on there and just did all the rugs made to order. I don't have an inventory of them. They're all made to order and are supposed to be like art pieces rather than just like a mass production. So that was like a conscious decision, just because like I don't have a warehouse. I don't want a warehouse of things. And I don't want to like get into like the
Warehousing.
distribution thing. And then it just like that site was like slowly building out, and then my art site was slowly building out. And I'm the person that if I want something, like I'm always trying to get it. Like I really wanted to paint a pool. That was like my dream job, is like paint a pool. And so I basically just made a render of a pool that looked pretty real of being a pool. And then that's how, and I was like, I want a pool basically, and then I got contacted by this architecture company. They were like, hey, we have a pool. And I was like, oh my God, awesome. So I think if I want something, I just like always try to do it. And also with my pillows that are, I guess, a year old now, but they're different than other pillows. They like made like my rugs, and they're all handmade, all hand woven. And I think one takes like 2 weeks to make. And that's another thing I just didn't want to do the mass again. Like I didn't want to just have printed pillow covers. I wanted them to be like my work and dimensional. And my weavers, when I first told them what I want, they were like, there's no way, we can't do that. And I was like, no, you can. Believe me, it's possible, and they're like, okay, well, we can try. And then they tried, and it worked out really well. But I think I'm the person that if people tell me like, no, I'm just like, no, this is going to work. Like, believe me, and then they often like try it. And I'm working on a project right now that I keep getting like no's from everyone. I was like, it can't be that hard. And then I accidentally emailed, I think the same company manufacturer that I emailed before. And they were like, man, you really want those? I was like, yes. And they're like, okay, let's try, right? So I think like I just keep pushing, and I don't take no for an answer, and I'm really good at making decisions, and really fast decisions. So I think that's why it looks like my output is pretty high. But everything I design, everything I make, everything I ship is like all done by me. Like I pack every single order for the pillows, and I box
Okay.
it up, and I bring it to the post office. And like now I organize actually pickups because of COVID. But yeah, like it's all like still my production. And I think people think that I'm a studio of 10 or sometimes, like
Yeah,
they,
I wanted to add, this is also one of my questions. I wanted to know, like, do you
yeah.
have like do you have employees?
No, I don't really. use assistants for murals. So because painting a large scale mural, like it's better to have more people, it's more fun, but it's also like faster obviously than me being like 2 weeks just painting, because in that time when I paint there's nothing else I can do. I barely can like reply to emails. So like now I use assistants, and at this point after so many murals and projects, I have my little like raster of assistants that I trust and that know how to paint my work. And
do you give them like a sketch of what you want to do, and they just paint based on the sketch, or do you?
So I'm always there to do it, right? So this year was the first time that I wasn't part of one mural just because of COVID. But yeah, it's like normally I'm there. They're just like listening to what I tell them what to paint or what to do. I sketch it out. They don't sketch it out. And but a lot of people, like, my work is like very clean, I guess. Like the shapes and the murals are very like clean, and and the edges are clean, but I don't use tape. It's all freehand, and a lot of people or designers or artists like have trouble doing that style because their style is very different. So it took me a while to like even find the right people that can work with me and want to work in that style, because it's not it's like a very like slow process. Like you can't just like, sometimes they would come like, yeah, I can paint, and then it would just put a lot of paint on. I was like, no, this needs 4 layers and not just one, like just because of how the technique works. And so now at this point, after so many murals, I have really solid people, and they're like really trustworthy and great, and I have them like in multiple cities at this point. And so basically they work with me contractor based, meaning like whenever I have a project and I need someone, like I'm painting 2 murals in February. Actually, I'm driving down to California, doing a whole road trip. But the first one I'm painting with my assistant she's here in Portland, and then one assistant that I painted many murals with, even the second one in San Francisco. She's in LA, and she's gonna drive up to San Jose actually for that mural, and then we're gonna keep driving down to like Palm Springs, and I'm painting another mural. So they like kind of like my team, but they not full-time hires or anything. They're just contract based. And then I have like a couple designers. One is actually, I guess she's based in Paris, that every now and then she like freelances for me, but she's like knows my work pretty well. And like if I have a lot of tasks that I have to get done, or just like ideation stuff for projects, like, like the design projects, I guess she can do or help me with, but like designing my murals, designing my art, and there's like no other person that can do it than me. So I couldn't even hire for that, right? So yeah, so I think I work mostly just like with teams like that. And then last year, actually, I went back to branding again, even though people forget about that part of my life. But I did like a shampoo branding for Harry's, which is a company out of New York, and that was like a big project. So I hired out like a team of 5 people, right? Like just for that project. But so that's kind of how I work. But then if it's like answering to press or answering orders or complaints about something not arriving or being broken, that's all me. Yeah.
Wow. I can see you have a busy day.
Yes, which is good, I guess.
How long does it take to paint such a mural?
It depends. Like it depends always on a lot of factors, obviously. Actually, from the size is one, but then the other one is like the texture of the wall. Like sometimes if it's like a stucco or like a weird concrete texture, it's like the first few layers that you paint, like the wall kind of like eats up, like it like sucks it in kind of thing. So that makes you take it like even more layers, and it takes a long time. But with a team of like 2 or 3, it's probably always between like a week to 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then we paint my paint schedule is a little crazy too. It's like we paint from 8 till 8 and sometimes longer.
Wow.
And then they just get like a lunch break. So that's kind of.
Yeah, it sounds pretty ambitious.
Yeah, but I just can't like do more, because the time I spend on every like wall, like that, I lose time on other things, and it's hard to like, sometimes I get a mural request for the same week, and I have to decide between one. And because when I say like I can send an assistant, they're like, no, like we don't want. And yeah, and which makes sense, because if you buy a painting, you don't want it painted by someone else, right? Like So they see it as like that, the same equivalent to art, and they're purchasing art that is on location, but they want the artist there. But COVID changed everything a little bit, because last year I managed to paint 2 murals without me being there. So.
But this is, I mean, at the end, it shows you that you're considered more an artist than a designer, right?
Depends on the project. I mean, for that part, yes, but then for the brand project, I'm definitely a designer. And then if I design tables or collections like furniture, I'm more a designer. But then I often paint them again, which makes it an artist. So I think I'm in this weird in between way kind of thing.
You've talked about the rugs and, you know, all the products you ship, and we've also talked about the murals. I guess it's mostly like business customers, you know, that want the murals, right?
No, it's private, it's business, is anyone actually.
Okay. But if it's businesses, why do they do it? Do they do it for marketing, or is it usually like showrooms or hotels?
If it's businesses, it's often like companies, like their offices, to make them like more, I guess, fun and friendly when clients come, or even for the people that work there. Then there's restaurants that have like a concept and they want to bring in like a mural that works in that concept, or, you know, hotel lobbies and things like that. So I think it's always like the mural became like, back in, I think at the beginning when I started painting my murals, I did some outside also, like in Chinatown and, you know, like New York, and my dad would be like, why are you standing on the street painting a wall? Like what happened to you, right? And I would be like, and I was just like, no, this is great. Like murals are, so like I think what murals or street art used to be has completely shifted too. Because what my parents know is like, you know, like you graffiti something quickly and it's not commissioned and it's mostly not legal or whatever. But mine were all obviously commissioned pieces, and I think people just like how it transforms like a space into, you know, something else, and they prefer it at this point, I think, over hanging art, I guess. And it kind of became this trendy thing almost. I feel like, at least in the United States, like it's definitely a thing. But I paint outside of it too. Like I have a couple now in Colombia, which I think it just shifted a little bit, that it's accepted as like a form of art and not just like something illegal, I guess.
I can see the prices for all of your products on the website, but what does it cost me as a business to have a mural painted by you?
That's an interesting question.
Example, you know, if I would ask you, you know, for our company, Cherry Deck, we have a 10-people office, and we have a wall about the size of a quarter of a tennis court. How much would I have to pay for that?
So I would first ask you all these questions of like, okay, give me the measurements, what's the wall made out of, the texture, all these things. Then I would make you an estimate, being like, first phase of that is like design development, which is actually me designing specifically for that space, making art for that, mocking it up into space in a render or what elevation view, then having that as like phase one. And that's like design, that's like my day rate, basically my design day rate. And then the next phase is like the execution at site. So actually meaning me coming to your office, doing the work. And that's my day rate, how many days I estimate. Let's say I say like 10 days, you would have to pay my day rate of 10 days for painting. And painting and design is a different. And then obviously material costs and all these things would fall on the client as well. So like paint and all these things. And also, because you're in Germany, you would probably have to like pay my ticket
flights,
and my hotel room, right? But that's like my model, and
Do you have like a pricing for your artist footprint?
What does that mean?
I mean, you have the day rates, you know, which is like basically based on the days, but after all, it's kind of like a piece of art, and you would expect, or I would expect, that I don't pay by the day rate, that I pay, you know, for the artist at the end of the day.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one with murals. You would think that that's how it works. Most of the people that I know that do murals, they charge by square foot, which I think is crazy because or square meter, because I think that makes you be like a contractor in the way of like how you paint a wall white, right? Like because they charge that way, and that makes sense because all they do is like paint. Not that it's not hard. I'm just saying that they don't put their art on it, right? They just like paint it white or green or whatever color they want, and they charge per square foot, and that makes sense. But a lot of clients email me and are like, "Hey, what's your square foot price?" I was like, "I don't have a square foot, like because I don't like agree with that model. So like the only way to get the value out that I need from it is making it with that model that I described, and that one kind of like doing that model secures me the money that I actually need for myself to be of value, I guess, for it, and also be considered still like, okay, cool, it's an art piece and it's not just like nothing. And I mean, I started painting murals for free because I didn't have any to show. So how will I get hired if I don't have a portfolio of murals?
Yeah, of course.
So
I mean, it's how most artists kind of start, right?
Yeah. So I did like a couple. I was like, I really want them, so I'm just paid to paint and I do it, kind of thing. And obviously now it's like a very different like time for me, and also like I wouldn't paint for every business. Like I make decisions on, does it work with me and my brand? Like, is this something I support? Ethically, I wouldn't paint for everyone, if that makes sense.
You mean like not for every company?
Yes, or...
Who wouldn't you paint for?
Yeah. I mean, companies that I don't believe in. I think, like either that I just don't believe the mission. Let's say they just like using terrible materials that are bad for the environment or whatever it is, right? Like companies like that, or just companies that are too commercial for me, I guess, like that I don't want my work to be. Like I have to always think about what is Studio Proba and what is my work. So I actually don't, I know a lot of people would love to be in like a Starbucks or something. I would not paint for Starbucks. Like, just because that's the level of commercial there is like too high for me that I don't like my work to be in, if that makes sense.
But so I understand, I think I understand, but commercial you don't mean by the size of the business, because obviously if you paint for Dropbox, it's something different. So you mean like the level of commercial automation that is, or how can I say
like franchises almost, like McDonald's. Let's say McDonald's. Right? I might do McDonald's. I kind of think that would be fun. But when I think about it as a brand, right? Like I need to like align with, if I agree with their mission or what they do. Would I actually buy it? Not Dropboxes per se, but let's say it's like a cosmetic company. Like then do I agree with their brand? Like is their logo something I like? Like it's like little decisions like that I want I don't want my brand to be connected to something that I don't like or don't agree with, I guess. Okay,
yeah, I understand that perfectly. I think it's something a lot of artists do when they're a little bit more mature, when they have the freedom of deciding, who to work for, when they're financially independent.
Yeah.
I want to touch a different topic, which is the topic of copyright infringement. So you're an artist with, hundreds of thousands of followers. You have a high output, so you have a very clear and distinctive style. You've been mentioned in a lot of newspapers, like from Vogue to New York Times and Harper's Bazaar. So all the big names. Do you see a lot of people like copying your work? I mean, I don't mean privately, but for commercial purposes.
Yeah. Yes. And that's been like a thing ever since already the posters, I think, started. Like there were companies that would just literally just sometimes even just take the poster from the website and just like print it on iPhone cases and stuff. And there's like one company in the Ukraine that just kept doing that. And then at that time, I didn't really have much. Like there's not much you can do, and they just like blocked me, and then I kind of was like, okay, whatever. I have to see past this, and there's a lot of ones like I had like Anthropology make a rug like maybe 80-90% similar to mine, and they just like tweak like 2 things that they make different. So there's a lot of that, and I think we all struggle, like all designers and artists are currently struggling with that, because you put it out there on Instagram, which is like, everyone can see it, which is great because that's how we get work and how we sell things too. And then you have the other side of it, which is like, people just copying and pretending it's their own or whatever they want. And I think it's a tough one because like a lot of my stuff is registered now. So like I would never go after like just like you feel like painting my painting at your house. Like I would never go after you. But
that's more like an honor, or not because of me, but like that somebody wants to gets inspired by you, and they don't want to sell it.
Yeah, and I'm all about getting inspired. I think I'm just like get really weird when it's like 1-to-1. But if it's like a big company, like I at this point like have a lot of my stuff registered, which I could go after someone like Anthropologie if I wanted to, just because now I have like the leverage. I didn't used to have it, and I think what I learned through the time and like all these years doing it, I think you just kind of have to, if you see something on Instagram that is like not a real, like a small business or whatever it is, you kind of have to just be like, okay, whatever, forget about it, just keep creating new things and like kind of being like ahead of the curve and just like trying to see it as a compliment, or knowing that whoever just like copies, they probably can't really do it on their own or like come up with something new on their own. So like that's like the only thing I can like tell myself is like, okay, cool, move on, next thing, like just keep going kind of thing. I honestly don't really want to know what's out there in like other countries that I have no idea. Like let's say China is very fast and just like producing the new Nike shoe. Like I'm sure they're really fast in producing a pillow of mine if they wanted to. So I think I'm just trying to like ignore it as much as I can until like something like big happens, and I then have to go after, which I haven't done yet. But I talked to a lawyer last year a lot, and he like set me up for like all these things that I could technically go after someone if I needed to.
Okay, yeah, it's good to know. I think you're probably doing it the right way. At the end of the day, what you do, obviously you do it, because it's your job, but also, you pull so much positive energy out of your work. What you do, there's the creations you have, they're really inspiring, I guess, also for yourself, the accomplishment of finishing something. I guess if you would follow like all the copyright issues all the time, it would just put you down, especially if you don't have a team to do that. Is there anything else you want to talk about? So, I mean, I have thousands of questions, obviously.
Ask another question.
Okay, so who's your biggest inspiration?
That's a long answer. You ready for it?
Yes.
Well, it's I get asked that question a lot. Just like who inspires you and what inspires your work, and I think I try to not be inspired by too much. Like let's say, Instagram, Pinterest, like you can find so much trends and the new in color or whatever. So obviously my brain sees it, but I try to not be inspired by it in like a direct way. So when I create or I design a mural or I design a painting, I just literally just start doing it without looking at things and without a concept really. And often when I can't do that, I will either call my grandma, which has been like the only like creative person in my family. She used to be a florist back in the day, and she taught me how to cook and like do all those like gardening creative things that I can imagine as like a kid. And she will be the one that talking to her will totally help me, or just like being outside in the world, because a lot of my work is inspired, I guess, from nature and like patterns from like the everyday. And that was in the poster day. Same thing, was just like the inspiration came from my days. And so I think I still keep doing that momentum of using that as inspiration. And a lot of people ask me like if there's one artist that I really like or something. And I think her work is very different than mine, which is great. So it's Faye to Good. She's a London-based furniture and space and clothing designer, and I love her work. And I think if I ever could work with her, that would be amazing. But again, very different type of work. And so, yeah, I think the everyday is maybe my answer for your question.
Okay, nice. I think it's a good closing statement. I'm gonna officially say thank you.
Thank you.
It was really great listening to you. I think we could talk. At least I could listen for at least 2 more hours.
Just 2,
or maybe 5 or 10. I could listen the whole day, all day long. It was very, very interesting. Everybody who has been listening to this now, we have another episode with Alex, which is much shorter, which is more like a directed to people who want to learn about tips and tricks and opinions on certain topics from Alex. Listen to it. It's also in the list of the podcast. Alex, thank you very much. We're going to put all the show notes into the blog on Cherry Deck and also on the description here in the podcast. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day too.